ANNO Mutationem for myself and many others was a game that immediately caught the eye. You can think pixel graphics are a bit overdone, but when you take pixelated visuals with a 2D and 3D graphic style, drop it into a cyberpunk cityscape, it's something that I can immediately get behind. The scenery, the trailers, all of that looked really good. Was that going to extend to the entire game? Well, yes, the visual flair is absolutely there. It's excellent. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Other aspects of the game, however, don't quite reach those lofty heights that the visuals set, but we'll get to that as well. Right off the bat, yes, the game looks fantastic. If you watch the trailers and you love the visuals out of the game, if you saw screenshots, don't worry, it extends to the majority, if not all, of the game. The city sections look great, they pop, and not only that, you'll go to plenty of different dungeons, and the amount of variety there with the different looks and environments, I was surprised by that, and they all looked very good. The visuals are great, and you've also got a great soundtrack to go with the visuals, not too over the top, but just soothing to go with the style of the game. Even in the combat, the game still keeps the tone in check, which I love. Soundtrack and visuals, top-notch work by the developers.
It must be these eggs that caused the malfunction.
Story-wise, ANNO Mutationem stars Anne Flores, a more reserved woman that almost comes across a bit emotionless at times, and I can definitely understand if from the get-go you consider her a bland main character. However, it comes together quite nicely, and as her backstory starts to unveil itself, then you start understanding why Anne is the way she is. She's also joined by her best friend Ayane through the core of the story. While Anne has a more serious tonality through the whole story, Ayane is a stark contrast to her, and actually adds a bit of joy and lightheartedness to the story, but when crucial plot points call for it, she can dial it back as well and be a little bit more serious. How they play off one another is actually one of the stronger parts of the game. However, I should note for some, Ayane could become a bit too much with the comedy. The over-the-top characterization and the comedy sometimes doesn't hit all the time, but for the most part, I thought it was well done between those two characters. I wish that could be said for the rest of the cast, and for a smaller game, the cast of the characters is quite big, but the majority are going to be kind of nameless faces. Some interesting, character arcs here and there, but nothing too gripping and nothing that I would say really stood out to me. However, shout out to Anne's dad, Holt. I found him to be pretty hilarious, and he was one of the low-key shining parts of this game from a character standpoint. Also, credit to the voice acting. I was surprised at how good it really was. Very good delivery on the key moments, and while the whole game isn't voice acted, a lot of the main story is. A surprisingly big amount of it is, unfortunately, and this is a widespread issue that everybody knows about at this point if you play the game. There was a litany of issues with the subtitles being incorrect or not fully there at all. I believe this is an issue they are working on fixing, but it's an incredibly glaring issue, and given that the game is a little bit dialogue heavy and the story's a big part of the game, again, it's a glaring issue. Speaking of the story, there's a lot of good here. I thought Anne's backstory playing out was gripping, and there's a lot of mystery in the game that unfolds at a rather questionable pace, if at all. There's just a lot going on, and not everything is as fleshed out as it could have been. And again, with so many characters, it's hard to get invested into a lot of them, if any, outside of Anne, Ayane, and again, I like me some Holtz in there. He was pretty hilarious, but again, a low-key character. If the game shaved off a bit and kept a bit more focus in its 10 to 14-ish hour main story campaign, I think it would have actually been a great benefit to the overall narrative of the game and made it better. Again, there's a lot of great thematics here, but it's not as fleshed out and well developed as I would have hoped for, but there are several high points and several key story moments that do, invoke a little bit of emotion, and that was definitely one of the hooking points of the game, but there was definitely more potential to be realized here. As far as combat goes, it starts off incredibly basic, and it does evolve quite a bit throughout the game. At first, you have a light sword and a gun, and the combat is pretty basic. Roll here, dodge here, and slash and shoot. If the enemy is far away, that's where your gun is going to come in. But the game introduces weapons and abilities at a gradual pace that keeps you doing different things. Eventually, you get a heavy sword, you'll get dual blades, various abilities you can unlock with gombits, essentially XP you get for beating regular enemies, and upgrades locked behind Grom, points you get for key victories throughout the game. There are some pretty cool upgrades. Being able to throw a flying knee in particular, I thought was pretty cool. That flying knee will knock back an enemy and could do even more damage. And you've got abilities like that that are pretty cool. You also have a superpower transformation you eventually get. That's pretty awesome too. Even with all of that, however, there's a lot of different abilities, a lot of different things you can do, but with a lot of the encounters, I did find myself adopting a similar gameplay pattern because it turned out to be the most effective. Wait for an attack and then slash away with my light sword after dodging. There are, however, some big boss fights that have a great bit of detail, and those are unique, and those are definitely the high points to me from a gameplay standpoint. They were different, they were challenging, a lot of the times a little bit of a stark contrast from the rest of the game that I found fairly straightforward, that I found fairly easy. And I don't consider myself that good at video games at all, but those boss fights I did find some challenge in. The big boss fights, those I found challenge in, and those are where I may have died a couple times here and there. You do have the opportunity to buy a lot of healing items and whatnot, and it's not going to be that challenging, especially if you're pretty good at video games, but the big boss fights I did find were quite good. What I didn't find as great were like these mini bosses that you had throughout the game. Those had some unique design elements as far as the enemy design, how they look. However, from a gameplay standpoint, it turned out to be a lot of the sameness across all of them. Dodge here, slash, 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 and they were very easy. And there was literally one mini-boss where I didn't get hit one time in my first encounter. Like, I feel like that shouldn't be happening, and there should be a little bit more variety, but at that point, I just knew how it was gonna go down with these mini-boss encounters. But the big bosses, the high-octane bosses, those were great. I just wish there was a little bit more of that extended through the entirety of the game. And again, with the big boss fights, you do have that little bit of a challenge spike, but for the most part, through the regular game, I had a pretty easy time with it. Also, there are, of course, some platforming sections, and those I found rather enjoyable. You get more abilities enhancing that aspect of the game as well, double jumping, dashing, etc., etc. There are some platforming puzzles, and there are some hacking puzzles. The hacking puzzles in particular I was not a fan of at all. They're fairly easy, just incredibly dull. As I noted, the game is around 10 to 14 hours, depending on how quickly you go through the game. There are some side quests extending the game a little bit, but the side quests themselves are a little bit hit or miss. There's some very, very strange design choices with the side quests, and they're not all too rewarding, so I don't know how many people are going to do all of that content, but the side quests, again, will extend the playthrough a little bit. Overall, I did enjoy my time with ANNO Mutationem. Outside of the visuals and soundtrack, a lot of the areas of the game did have glaring issues, but no aspect of the game would I say is downright bad. The combat, as you get more abilities, does get more and more enjoyable. The story, while it certainly has its issues, it's fairly interesting the whole way through, and at no point can I say I was thoroughly bored with the game, but as far as the narrative, a little bit more disappointed by the end. Fixing the dialogue issues would certainly be a bonus, and hopefully that does come in a future update. Currently, the game's at $25, and if you love the look of the game and like action platformers, you'll definitely find enjoyment out of the game. However, with the issues at hand, my final score for ANNO Mutationem is a 7 out of 10. A good game, just a little bit shy of greatness, but with a few updates, I really think it can get a lot better. But that's gonna do it for me. If you like action platformers, check out the game. Maybe wait for a sale on it if you've got a big backlog right now, but sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.